All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I know some people are still trickling in. Welcome. My name is Alyssa Vine. I'm the University Director of Credit for Prior Learning in CUNY's Central Office of Academic Affairs. And welcome to today's session on multi-campus CPL evaluation. Thank you so much to the CUNY Innovative Teaching Academy for their partnership on today's event, and as well as the professional development series that we've been offering throughout this year. All of the sessions that we've done so far this year have been recorded and posted onto the CPL website. So there may be some things that we move very quickly through today. And if you're interested in finding out more, we have a lot of other resources on the CPL website. So more on all of that soon. To get us started today, I'll just very quickly share what we're hoping that everyone takes away from today's session. Our hope is that the conversation today helps everyone recognize the benefits and opportunities that can be associated with intercampus approaches to CPL. Also hoping that people come away with a clearer understanding of CPL policy and thinking about how working with multiple campuses can improve consistency and equity in CPL opportunities for students. And also, we've had several committees that have gone through the process and come out with recommendations, and we're hoping that today's conversation can also help colleges utilize those recommendations to make more CPL opportunities available. I'm going to take a moment to introduce our three panelists today, who are representing three different committees that we have convened over the last year or so. We have with us today Tatiana Klein. She's a professor in bilingual education and TESOL at City College. We have Professor Abu Kamruthaman, who is a professor in security, AI, informatics, and information systems at York. And Jennifer Gilkin, a professor and the program coordinator in early childhood education at BMCC. Before we dive into the discussion from today's panelists, and I'm going to try to get to that as quickly as possible. But first, I'm just going to do a little framing on CPL policy and just some elements of what we mean by multi-campus evaluation that I think will be helpful in today's discussion. So first of all, for those who may be sort of new to this space, Credit for Prior Learning at CUNY, we use CPL, and we sometimes use it interchangeably with PLA, which stands for Prior Learning Assessment. In either case, with either acronym, we're talking about an academic process that provides students with the opportunity to earn credit for college level learning that they've acquired outside of the traditional college setting. CUNY's policy, which has been in place since 2020, names 4 specific methods for earning credit for prior learning. For standardized exams, so CLEP, AP, a variety of other programs. The standardized exams are actually mandated. All CUNY colleges must award credit for qualifying scores on those exam programs. The policy also includes non-collegiate coursework, which we'll talk a lot more about in today's program, and also portfolio assessment, which is a form of individualized assessment, as well as challenge exams, which can be offered locally as a way that students can demonstrate their mastery of a particular course content. We go into a lot more detail on all of these in other sessions that we've done. So again, I would definitely encourage you to check out our CPL website for more. But for today, non-collegiate coursework is really going to be the focus. A couple points on CUNY's policy that I just want to make sure everyone is aware of. On this slide here, you'll see on the left-hand side, I've lifted the direct policy language, but then I've aimed to sort of summarize it a little more succinctly on the right-hand side, just to boil it down to some key points. The first point that I want to emphasize is that it is faculty who determine the alignment and decide the appropriate equivalencies and credit awards. They are our subject matter experts, and they are the ones that make the decisions on behalf of their college for how and when to award CPL credit. Another key point from the policy is that credit can be awarded for major courses. It can be awarded for general education requirements and also departmental electives. It can also be awarded for general elective credit, but that should really be a last resort. We really should try to determine alignment that would give students credit that will actually help them advance more quickly toward their degree. A really important point in the policy is that when students receive CPL credit and then they transfer to another CUNY college, the CPL credit transfers as though they took the course at the original CUNY college and is not subject to reevaluation by the receiving college. So it acts just like any other transfer credits that they may take with them from one CUNY institution to another. Finally, CPL credits do not fulfill residency requirements. So just a couple basics on the CPL policy that I want everyone to be clear about. So as I mentioned, the focus of today's session, when we're talking about multi-campus evaluation, we're really thinking about non-collegiate coursework. That's the terminology in the policy. And what it refers to are various different kinds of organized learning experiences that follow set curriculum and have structured assessments of learning that can be evaluated for alignment with college courses. So thinking of industry recognized credentials, professional licenses and certificate programs, workplace trainings, continuing education offerings, military trainings and occupations. So to keep that in mind as we're going through today's discussion. So CUNY's policy points to a few different resources for evaluating non-collegiate learning, which are outlined on this slide. And I know there's a lot going on here, but I wanted people to have it as a resource for after the fact. But basically, following these recommended processes, looking at the American Council on Education and the National College Credit Recommendation Service for their recommendations that are nationally used by colleges and universities across the country as a basis for thinking about how different kinds of learning experiences can align with college courses. So that's one way that colleges can look at non-collegiate learning. They also can look at equivalencies that exist from other CUNY colleges to think about the right course matches on their own campus. We have a great resource in TREX for this purpose. But then there are also non-collegiate learning experiences that haven't necessarily been evaluated by these national services, or maybe the recommendations that they have are not exactly the training providers or the content that we're looking at. Or there's just a desire by the faculty to really understand more deeply what the content of a learning experience is and how it aligns. And in that case, CUNY's policy does point to a couple of resources that can guide a process of evaluation. So following these kinds of recommended processes can lead to different outcomes at different CUNY colleges. One department might look at a learning experience differently than another, or have a different set of sort of curricular standards that they're thinking about and trying to match up against. And this can also lead to different numbers of credits that are awarded and different course equivalencies. That's okay, and it is the way that CUNY's policy works. It does give each college at the academic department level the opportunity to make these determinations locally. But it can get complicated for students and for colleges, and it also can make it hard for partner organizations that are interested in creating on-ramps into more than one CUNY college. So in thinking about those challenges around our CPL policy, the Office of Academic Affairs has come up with multi-campus evaluation as a strategy for making sure that there's more consistency and equity in the way that CPL credits are awarded for common learning experiences across multiple colleges. And the goal of the multi-campus evaluation is that we bring together faculty from the same disciplines from multiple different colleges to engage in an evaluation process that is it's collaborative and it comes up with a recommendation that all CUNY colleges can consider using. The recommendations that these committees come up with are not mandated for colleges to implement, but it provides a basis for understanding that other CUNY faculty have evaluated, and this is what they have come up with collectively across multiple campuses. The way that these committees are formed, we look to provosts and CPL leads to help us connect with the right academic departments who can nominate participants. And then we try to come up with a balance of four-year colleges and two-year colleges and representative expertise depending on the specific learning experience that we're evaluating. When you bring together faculty like this, it allows for all the participating colleges to be working off of the same information and following the same process. And also everyone has an opportunity to hear and address each other's concerns and questions and come up with a recommendation that hopefully really accounts for everybody's perspective and potential uses on their campus. The committees, generally their work occurs over the course of about 4 months. As an example, a committee may have its first meeting in February, come together to sort of level set around what we're talking about in terms of a specific credential. In the second meeting, they may bring in relevant industry experts, perhaps students who have already earned CPL credit from certain colleges that are already awarding it. Or people who have earned the certification and are considering college, and really start to look at course syllabi, the learning outcomes, and also any similar materials associated with the learning experience itself. In the third meeting, they would work on drafting a recommendation and workshopping that to maybe gathering input from other colleagues and really trying to bring together a recommendation that reflects all perspectives and feels right to the whole group from the committee. And then in the final month, we would be distributing the recommendation across CUNY and inviting other colleges to take a close look at it and determine the right fit on their campus if appropriate. So I know I just threw a lot of information out there, but I hope that that was good framing for today's discussion. At this point, I am welcoming back our 3 panelists who have served on 3 different committees. And maybe if we can start by just having each of you reintroduce yourself and also share just in broad strokes the committee that you worked on or are currently involved with. Tatiana, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. It's great to have a walk down memory lane of everything our committee did. My name is Tatiana Klein. I'm a faculty in the bilingual and TESOL programs at the City College of New York, right behind me. So our committee worked on the New York State Seal of Biliteracy was enacted in New York State in 2012 as legislation for high school students to earn on their transcript. And our committee looked at creating a recommendation for CUNY schools to offer credit to those students who earn the New York State Seal of Biliteracy, specifically in the target language or the world language, because they also earn it in English.
Thank you, Tatiana. Abu, if you can go next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Abu Kamrizaman. I'm from York College. As you can see, my department is, the discipline is cybersecurity AI. Information system. My background is like computer science. So I was in the CPL committee last summer. So it was a very wonderful experience. Thanks to Alyssa and the team. It's really, and I do have 22 years of actually IT industry experience full-time. So it was a very wonderful experience for me. So from actually from the committee, first we met, we kind of talked about like the brief info she just gave, it was a much broader. And then we kind of put recommendation from each colleges, like what are the courses we have. And we kind of had some courses that been aligned with the industry certification. So some colleges actually shared it's already been adopted in their campuses, and from our perspective, how we can adopt some of this into courses. So that was actually, and finally that was, I think she compiled a recommendation and shared with all the colleges. So that's my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jen, who is currently a committee member.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me, I'm Jen Gilkin from the Borough of Manhattan Community College in the teacher ed department, but specifically in the early childhood program. And so we're, as Alyssa mentioned, we're currently working on evaluating industry-wide credential called the CDA for credit for prior learning. And I was super excited to be invited to join this committee because at BMCC, we already give credit for prior learning for students who have earned a CDA. Similar to Abu, prior to coming to BMCC, I had 20 plus years in the field as an early childhood practitioner, so really knew the value of the CDA. But I have to say, it's been really eye-opening, and my own knowledge has expanded both in kind of the CUNY workings around applying credit for prior learning, but also diving deeper into getting information about the specifics of the CDA, which has been really, really helpful. So I'm excited to sort of share what we're doing and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you all. The next question that I wanted to share with the group, what were your impressions of credit for prior learning more generally before you joined the committee, and maybe something that you understand differently on the other side of the committee experience? Abu, do you want to take the first response to this?
Sure. I kind of had the idea what it is, but again, and I have seen prior to joining your college, I was at BCC. So they were already having this CPL, actually, some of the courses. But when I joined, I was there only for a year. So it was already happening. So I did not know the groundwork that needed to happen. Like, how does it start? Where does it start? So that was kind of, for me, eye-opening, because I'm a subject matter expert. That doesn't mean that I know actually how to do all the paperwork or where to reach out and how to reach out. So that was quite a very wonderful experience. And, multiple campus runs differently, but in both campuses that I joined, the curriculum committee, especially the college curriculum committee, has a lot of hurdle to get things done a lot of times. So that, and to learn from other colleagues that how to actually maneuver that, if I put it politely. So that was really a good learning as well, because it's and I was teaching for adjunct for 22 years, but that doesn't mean anything because you don't really get to enjoy this kind of community exposures and stuff. So it was very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tatiana, how about you? What was your impression of CPL before joining it?
That's very easy to answer because I had never heard of it before. So I was just like, what's happening? Where it sounded like a great idea to me. So yeah, never heard of it. Now, and what impressed me through the process was just how rigorous of a process it was. Even though our recommendation is like 2 sentences, all the work we did and kind of the 4 months leading up to it and across different campuses. And I felt like it was really very thorough and succinct and really powerful. And what's like so amazing is that now, and I'll just, if I can just put in the chat, like our recommendation is now in 11 colleges already and happening and more. And that's just something so amazing to see, because what I always hear about policy is that it goes so slowly. And this is a policy that actually moves, and you can see progress and impact on students and their careers and their futures. So yeah, I went from knowing nothing to knowing quite a bit in quite a short amount of time.
That's great. Yeah, no, I think it is. It's true that I think that the impact of this work can actually really take shape for students as colleges start adopting the recommendations, which is just really great to see. And thank you for sharing that information about the 11 colleges that have adopted CPL equivalencies for the seal of biliteracy. It's really exciting. Jen, how about you? Any impressions of CPL beforehand and sort of what you have learned so far?
Sure. Thank you. So as I mentioned, we had already given credit for prior learning for students with the CDA. So when I heard about this, I thought, oh, great. Let me just jump on this committee. We're already doing this. We already think it's important. But now that I'm on the committee and we're rolling our sleeves up and doing the work, I've learned so much. The slide that you shared, Alyssa, around the methods for earning credit was really exciting for me to see. One of the things that came up in our discussion on the committee is, well, what about students who may have an expired credential? Or what about students who may have not fully completed it? And in sort of the past, the way we've done this at BMCC is we've said to those students, oh, so sorry, right? This doesn't meet our framework. But now I have so much more information about potential directions that we can go for those students, because we've seen how impactful and motivating getting credit for prior learning is for our students. So I'm really excited, as the committee's doing the work, to think about those students who in the past I've said to them, I'm sorry, right? It doesn't completely check the box that we created, but now I know. And we're working on some flexibility within those boxes, which I think is really exciting.
That's great. And also, Jen, I know you and I have worked together on other CPL evaluations that BMCC has approached locally, which, you know, leads me to another question about how does working with faculty colleagues from other colleges sort of change that process and shape your impression of the credential that you're evaluating? So I'll start with Jen, go back to her.
Sure. So it's, you know, we all work, although we're one big university, we all work in our silos, right? And so I come with a BMCC focused lens when I'm doing this work, and expanding it throughout CUNY and coming together with our other colleagues is so important, because it broadens my perspective about the credit for prior learning. Just a tiny little example. We have articulations with our four-year partners, and we have really good, strong relationships with them, and they're working on this committee. And so being able to hear sort of both their concerns and their ideas around it has been a great opportunity for me to kind of step out of my BMCC silo and think about it from a wider CUNY perspective, which has been super beneficial.
That's great. Thank you. How about you, Tatiana? Any thoughts on how sort of coming together with faculty colleagues from across the university? I know in some cases, you know, in a discipline, the world can be very small and you know each other, and in other cases, there's a lot of new faces and even different departments represented on a committee. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, no, we had a very diverse committee, not only like different 4-year, 2-year community colleges, but also folks from different departments. So there was just 2 of us from there was myself from bilingual education, my other colleague Kate Mencken from linguistics and TESOL, and then we had the majority of folks were from departments that do world languages, modern languages, etc. I see one here now, Maria Enrico from BMCC. So I think that was really unique, not only to speak with folks from other departments, but from other universities. I mean, I don't even know the people like down the hall from me, you know, so it's like really a interesting experience. And then also because like in education and in language departments, we have different perspectives also. So some of the courses, for example, that we were talking about that might apply to the seal of biliteracy were from folks in those departments, and they felt differently about them than we might in a bilingual education program. So I think it ended up with a lot of rich dialogue and informed at the end of the day our recommendation.
Thank you. And Abu, how about you? The experience of sort of coming together with faculty from all different corners.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. You know, Jennifer mentioned about BMCC. I got to know actually how broad the BMCC was, about this CPL and how things are in place. And I already mentioned about BCC. So of course, I was able to revisit with their participation, and I saw from the Queen's College also how they're working to actually bring some of the courses. So our discipline was mostly on the computer science spectrum. Some of the courses that we were basically, I think we took the BMCC model and then we were trying to expand to other colleges. So, and also I got to meet new colleagues, just like I mentioned, like, so I know I have now some network. When I plan to deep dive into it, I can really chime in and say, hey, I'm trying to do this. What do I do? And all that stuff. And then also got to learn that there is actually a whole office that devoted to work on this CPL. I was not aware of that also prior joining too. So, so it was a wonderful learning experience. I wouldn't have known if I had not joined to that committee, actually. Thanks.
Thank you. And, it occurs to me that in Jen and Abu have sort of these, on both of your committees, there were already colleges that are awarding credit for the credentials that you were looking at. Jen, in your case, it was your department, and Abu, in your case, I believe it was, it was other colleges that were on the committee. I guess, how does the knowledge and I guess this question is for Abu, but I think there's sort of a a flip side of it for Jen as well. But like, how did sort of learning about how another college was already doing this and then coming sort of to the table with them to think about what recommendation made sense, how does that shape your thinking and maybe your department's sort of willingness to consider and implement a CPL opportunity?
Actually, I fell behind from my end because, and also the way, actually, like I said, even though we work on the computer science spectrum, but my department is actually business and economics. So we do have information system management. So there is a overlap from my end that actually needed to work out. And I did also talk to CS chair. So, but we haven't formally met and sat together to go more detail on it. When I approached to him after the training in end of summer, or maybe beginning fall, he seemed very interested, but it didn't just really happen. The deep conversation didn't really happen. And sometimes it can be also a little harder when like I'm in a business department, but I'm trying to work on the CS department. So that collegial also. So basically, what I can say from my experience, I have to do some first of all awareness and ground level work to try to bring two departments together. And there is one specific that we could actually adopt in my department. The one we have a course that can that easily fall into the cybersecurity spectrum, Security Plus. So that again, I haven't actually approached that yet because we are actually introducing new minors on AI and all that stuff. So the focus is a little different now, but over the years, definitely I would love to really, push further and try to get this working,
Thank you. Yeah, I think I think it was Tatiana said a few minutes ago about the fact that sometimes things can move slowly. I think when these recommendations come from the committee, colleges have, in any given department, the ability to turn their attention to it or really dig into it and think about it. That process can vary from campus to campus. And we definitely understand and appreciate that. And, for anybody who's in the audience today who maybe has received these recommendations to your department and hasn't necessarily had a chance to operationalize or really dig into the content of it, just know that my office is always willing to talk and think and help with your considerations at any time. And it's not wrong to come into it a little bit later or to have questions about it or end up approaching it a little bit differently. But we're really hoping that these recommendations can help sort of incite that discussion at the campus and help people really understand the opportunity that exists there. And I guess maybe as a next question, would any of you have any thoughts you want to share on how the impact on students maybe shape the discussion for your committee or maybe locally at your campus?
Yeah, I can share about that. I think when we look at the seal of biliteracy in New York City public schools and who's earning this seal, a lot of the students are immigrant origin students. And a lot of those students are often, their home languages are often viewed as a deficit, right? And as a problem. And so what we really wanted to do is use this credit for prior learning as a tool to validate these students' home languages, celebrate them, and show them that they have value not only in their day-to-day lives, but even in a university setting. So I think that was really important. And I think that's becoming even more important now under this current administration that just did an executive order to make English the official language. So when I was talking to Alyssa about this, you said something that resonated so much, that this is really like an act of resistance, right? By giving students credit for their home languages when they are biliterate in them and when they have showed high levels of proficiency. So I think and this is not only something that's exciting for colleges, for students that get to colleges, but it is a motivating factor for students in the K-12 system, knowing that what they are going to do, what they will achieve at the high school level, though they start much before, will be, you know, rewarded at the college level. So it's been very exciting for students to hear. It's been very exciting for their teachers to hear. And I think it's exciting for our field that these are the people that can become our bilingual teachers, our world language teachers, our translators, and do work in AI in multiple languages too, right? Because the world is, English is not enough, as much as, you know, people want to think that it is. So yeah, so I think there's just so many different levels, especially for the work that we did around the seal of biliteracy. And I'm so grateful that in this moment that we're really amplifying this through the credit for prior learning.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Tatiana was saying. So thank you for that, Tatiana, and talk a little bit about both the students and the field, right? So the CDA has been around for a while, and it is often an entry in to the work of early childhood teachers. And so being able to respect that work that students have already done and validate it through giving them credit, I think is both motivational, but it also really makes a statement in the field, right? We are saying that this is valuable. As you know, there is a childcare crisis here, not just in New York City, but across the nation. Again, similar to what Tatiana was saying, this administration is kind of dismantling that. And so by being able to provide this opportunity for people who are already working in the field and have done this work, I think is really super for both the field and for the students, right? We're being able to say to them that we value this. And one of the things that we found at BMCC is that our students who come in with the CDA, with that credit for prior learning, really turn out to be the leaders in our classes and in our program, right? They are sharing their knowledge. Our classes are structured like a community of practice. They tend to be the more knowledgeable others in that community. And that's really exciting as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Abu.
So I have seen it in BCC, like what Jen said. So usually student with the knowledge based, it really helps with the other peers. And like I said, at York, even though we are not able to establish that quite well yet, but I think there is a momentum. We just started like a few weeks back. We just brought 2 Google engineers for AI talk. So for us here, I think there has to be some kind of culture established first before we jump into trying to, because there might be a fight back at the beginning, because a lot of professors may not be aware of that. Like, especially I can talk for my discipline, like computing. It's very much required these days when you go apply for jobs that you need to have certain certifications. Most of the jobs, you can take even AI, for example, which is brand new, but it's still industry is willing to respect or give more preference that students with some level of professional level certification, not just a degree. So that culture needs to be understood, I think, on the administration very well. I think student well understand because, they're the one who is facing it. So it's just now trying to move further, like how we can make sure that we get it done what student needs actually. So, and there is also some other level of work that I have seen, like I said, BCC in the model that, you can have some grants and then have student give, and I also saw that actually BMCC is doing it. They have some level of grants where they're student giving credits, from those, like they're actually preparing students for those certificate in-house also. And then then get the CPL. So there is some other level of flexibility or that work can be done to motivate students to go through this certifications as well. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been really interesting to observe with the various committees where the conversation is about it's about the alignment between the certification and the curriculum. But then I think it also, in some cases, it provides this opportunity for faculty to talk about, well, what is our curriculum not necessarily on top of right now? As like if we're looking to these industry certifications, are we also preparing, like if the alignment isn't there, is that perhaps sometimes a reflection on our curriculum and how it isn't necessarily aligned with what industry needs and is looking for? I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about that they'd like to share, but just how it can open the conversation beyond the recommendation for CPL, but also to help faculty from multiple campuses, I guess, think about how they are serving their current students and prospective students. It's okay if maybe that's all there is to say about it, but I think it's an interesting piece of what happens when you bring faculty together from multiple campuses to think about this type of this element of their work and their service to students. I guess actually, I think at this point, let me see if there are questions from the audience. I have a couple more questions, but I'll hold those for now. If anybody would like to unmute and ask a question or drop it into the comments, would love to hear from our audience. I guess one thing that please, anybody who wants to ask a question, feel free to jump in and interrupt me. But one thing that I'll mention is that when we're thinking about the credentials that we would convene a committee around, I'll just share some of the considerations that go into that. We're trying to look at learning experiences that are broadly relevant across New York City. So, there's like lots of people out there who, for example, in the IT space, there's many people who may have the CompTIA certifications or the CCNA certification that Abu's committee evaluated. These are people who are working in the field and, perhaps they started college, but with this certification, they were able to get a job and get started on their career. But there is an opportunity to bring those people back to college or invite them to college for the first time. So there's a real recruitment opportunity that we're looking for when we're thinking about which certifications we're going to sort of engage in this process around. Also, where we know that it's a credential that will likely, we're not picking credentials that we don't believe have college level learning. It is the faculty's job to determine that actual bar, that it reaches that level of college level learning, but we're really looking for learning experiences that have deep demonstrated rigorous content and assessment built into them. And we're looking for certifications where especially where we have like partners, either employer partners or in the case of the Seal of Biliteracy, where the state and the city, New York City Public Schools, the City Council, there's a lot of interest in being able to say to people who are earning that distinction, CUNY is a place that you can go where it will be recognized. And in order for us to be able to say CUNY is a place where this can be recognized and not just, like BMCC or York or, one college is a place where it can be recognized. We really do need that collaborative approach. And we don't feel that it should be the responsibility of any given partner organization to go college by college by college trying to make that case and figure that out. We feel that that's something that it's our faculty experts are the ones who understand the curriculum. They are the ones who should be engaged in that process and make that determination. And for us to try and make that more seamless and just a more sort of an infrastructure to it, instead of sort of leaving it to any given department to try and navigate that independently. So, I think that if anybody here is from a department and you can think of certifications like within your realm that would sort of fit those boxes, I'm always looking to sort of build out the list of ones that we might turn to next. So we're open to that conversation where there's interest. Any other questions from the audience that I can turn us to?
Alyssa, I don't have a question. I just wanted to take a moment to emphasize one of the exciting things about being on this committee is discovering that there is some flexibility in the credit for prior learning, as you mentioned. So like I said, back in 2015, having worked in the field, we knew how important the CDA was. And with the credit for prior learning initiative, then we decided, oh yeah, right, it makes sense to give credit for students who come with a CDA. And we established like our rubric and our way that we did it, and it's been set for a while. And then in joining the committee, what I realized is we getting other perspectives and then working so closely with you, Alyssa, is that we actually have a little bit more flexibility than what we had originally anticipated. And that, as we have an early childhood working group. And so as I've taken the work that we've done on the committee back to our working group to share it, that's been really exciting for us to think about how we're awarding this credit and what it means and how we're evaluating it. And so I just wanted to share that with all of the faculty here, that this is not a rigid process, right? This is a flexible process where there's ample space for sort of all voices and concerns to be able to be heard, and yet for the work to still move forward. And so that was kind of an aha moment for me as I've been doing this work on the committee.
I guess I do have a question for you, Alyssa, and that is, how does CPL work
I don't need your text messages every second, okay?
with state requirements? Because, for example, in teacher education, right, they have to do student teaching. Yet we have people that come that have maybe worked in a charter school where they came, where they were able to work without certification. So, like, can we supersede? Like, what is that dance? Because
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Super relevant in education for sure, and some other fields as well. And I guess how I would answer that is to say that that we can't supersede state requirements, and it does present a challenge in some cases. But I think what makes so you cannot award CPL credit for courses that are required for state licensure, right? Like that's what we're talking about here. However, I think that's where the CPL policy and some relative flexibility that exists within that policy can be like interesting and worthy of consideration. And an example that I would give there would be, okay, so maybe the course that is like the best and most appropriate match for a particular learning experience, it is one of those that a student is just going to have to take at the college for state licensure reasons. However, maybe there is another way that this particular learning experience could fulfill a departmental elective, or perhaps there's alignment with the common core, flexible core, like one of the areas in that space within pathways that this course this learning experience could be awarded blanket credits to fulfill that requirement. So then the student still receives credit that's meaningful to them and is going to help them advance in their degree program, but it doesn't necessarily have to have that like clash and overlap with courses that are required by the state. So so that's, I think that campuses who are looking at a recommendation like this or considering CPL for a reason and run into that, I would, consider them to be, a little more fluid in their thinking about how they could still attract students who have the certification, give them recognition of their college level learning in a way that's meaningful to them, and also make sure that they're taking the courses that they need to reach that licensure on the other end. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think probably a better example I could have gave is people who come from other countries who have had teaching experience in schools is probably the bigger one than charter schools. I don't know why that came up. But one more question, a really quick one. Does CPL work for graduate programs, or is it just undergrad?
Great question. So if you read the CUNY's CPL policy, it's definitely geared toward undergraduate programs. That was sort of how it was developed and devised. However, there is nothing about the policy that precludes us from establishing CPL credit at the graduate level as well. And I know that there are examples across CUNY where faculty are creating CPL opportunities in graduate programs. And I think that that's an area that over the next year or however in the future that I know that I'm really interested in, and the Office of Academic Affairs is really interested in supporting and trying to help expand those opportunities as well. So yes, graduate CPL for graduate level programs is definitely on the table too. Yeah, and I think Jen, what you were saying before, I think is that's a really important observation about the flexibility that that CPL can offer. And I would also say that, like, if anybody here is representing a department that maybe is sort of struggling to come to consensus on CPL, or is unsure about like the impact that it will have, I think that it's important to recognize that that CPL is really dynamic, right? Like there could be, like your department could say, okay, we're going to try awarding credit for this based on the fact that other colleges are awarding credit for it. We understand the, the recommendation and why it makes sense, and, all of that. And we want to give it a try, but we're like a little nervous that, the students aren't going to be as prepared as we need them to be, or we don't really know what the uptake is going to be like. And, there's all those questions that percolate. And it's okay for a department to try it and then decide that actually, I think that we need to change what the equivalency is. Like, I think that over time, just because a department decides to award credit doesn't mean that as the industry changes, as the certification requirements change, as curriculum changes, that the credit award and the equivalent course can't be, like that can't change and be sort of like recast over time. So I think that I just say that we really, faculty are the ones who decide what CPL equivalencies make sense, and they can also be the ones who decide that needs to be tweaked and that needs to be reconsidered. So that I don't let that impede your interest in creating CPL opportunities. The possibility that the landscape might shift. We have a few minutes left. Any other questions from the audience today? I guess the last question that I'll throw out to the group is just, what advice would you give to faculty members or others who are associated with CPL that are in the audience today? What advice would you give about CPL in general, and perhaps the opportunity to participate in a committee like this? What do you sort of wish you had known at the onset that you might be able to share here?
I can go. So basically, actually, what is important is, again, as I mentioned earlier, the work happens at the campus. So, the campus level or the department, that they need to be aware of the importance of it. So, like, if there is a group of people who are aware of the need, then I think that job becomes much easier. So, like, in my case, I'm a little hesitant because I'm not able to really see that how I can proceed with convincing people, because there is a great need, like, like you mentioned already, CompTIA and Cisco stuff is like, being very popular. And I saw the BMCC and like I was also at BCC, how they're using it. So it's just now here trying to convince the choir that, hey, we need to really focus into this and try to see if we can have this get approved. So from my end, I think the learning would be look at campus, like, and or in your department, and try to bring the awareness that we should have this kind of like, CPL thing going on. And also I think also another maybe help would be like if there is a momentum from the student body, that helps a lot actually. I think to things get moving faster, because when there is a demand from the student comes, things gets, I think, more importance. And like, so I think that's where my recommendation, or I'd say observation, that like, if we can have the students really understand and see how things done, and I think that helps.
Yeah, that's a great point. The case making, and also really highlighting and propping up the student benefits and the student demand. I think those are really good points. Tatiana or Jen, would you like to jump in with any thoughts?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Abu was saying about the importance of student voices, and then also the importance of the industry expert voices, right? So reaching out to we have fieldwork partners, and they are really quick to share with us how important that CDA is, and how valuable it is for them. And so it's really important that we align what we're doing with the industries that our students are going into, and as I was, our student voices as well. So that is kind of my recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I'll quickly add like awareness. Like as faculty, I had no idea what this was. So if we're not even aware of CPL, we can't even take the next step to like, have students think about it or talk to the field. So just like, hey, this is CPL at your college. These are all the programs that have CPL. Could you have CPL? Like where does this fit? So just, I think for me, that would have been the most important, because I don't think City College has a lot going on with CPL yet. Yeah.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Really appreciate the discussion today. And I will make sure that the slide deck, which also has, I did include in it more in-depth information about each of the committee and the work that they did or are doing. So all of that will be sent to everybody who registered today. Thank you so much for joining, and everyone have a great day and a great weekend.